Love is not a light switch. It doesn't just turn off overnight. When someone truly loves you, that feeling is deep-rooted, built over time, strengthened through experiences, and solidified by connection. Love isn't just a moment, it's a series of choices, a commitment, an unspoken promise. So when someone who once showered you with love, attention, and care suddenly starts ignoring you, it's not that the love magically disappeared, something changed. And it's not always what we think. We are conditioned to believe that love is a constant state, but in reality, it is an evolving emotion. It deepens, it fluctuates, it gets tested. And often, when people start acting differently, when their warm embrace turns cold, when their words of affection turn into silence, it's not because their love vanished, it's because something inside of them has shifted. Maybe they're facing their own battles, doubts, or insecurities. Maybe they're struggling with emotions they don't know how to express. Maybe they're afraid. Fear is one of the biggest silent killers of love. People don't always admit it, but the more they feel, the more vulnerable they become. And vulnerability for many is terrifying. Some people run from it. They pull away, not because they don't care, but because caring this much makes them feel out of control. They distance themselves to avoid getting hurt, to avoid confronting emotions they aren't ready to deal with. And sometimes people pull away not because of fear, but because of distraction. Life gets heavy, stress piles up, responsibilities weigh on them. And in those moments, their attention shifts. They start prioritizing different things, and without realizing it, they stop showing up in the way they once did. The problem isn't always that the love is gone, it's that their focus has changed. But here's the thing, love isn't just about feelings, it's about actions. Someone can love you deeply and still make choices that hurt you. Someone can care about you and still not know how to show it in a way that makes you feel secure. And that's why actions will always speak louder than words. You can tell yourself 100 different reasons why they're ignoring you. You can justify their behavior, make excuses, convince yourself it's just a phase. But at the end of the day, their actions are the only truth you need. When someone is in love, when they truly value you, they don't let silence replace communication. They don't leave you questioning your worth. They don't create a space where you have to wonder what went wrong. Even when they're struggling, even when life is hard, even when they don't have all the answers, they communicate. They show up. They make the effort to reassure you, to remind you that no matter what they're going through, their love for you hasn't changed. And if they aren't doing that, that's an answer in itself. The hardest thing to accept is that love alone isn't always enough. Relationships require consistency. They require effort, patience, and presence. And if someone has suddenly started ignoring you, the truth isn't in what they used to say, it's in what they are doing right now. Love doesn't just disappear, but attention does. Effort does. And when those things start fading, you have to ask yourself whether you're holding on to the idea of love rather than the reality of it. It's easy to get caught up in memories, to replay the moments when they made you feel cherished and special. But love isn't proven in the past, it's proven in the present. What matters is not who they were when things were easy, but who they are when things get complicated. Because love isn't just about how someone treats you when they're happy and available. It's about how they treat you when life tests them, when emotions get messy, when they have the choice to either lean in or pull away. If they're choosing to pull away, ignoring you without explanation, leaving you in uncertainty, then the love they once showed you is not the love they're showing now. And that matters. Because love that is real, love that is strong, love that is worth holding on to, it doesn't leave you questioning. It doesn't leave you feeling invisible. It doesn't make you chase it just to feel seen. The most painful thing about love isn't losing it, it's realizing that the love you believed in is no longer being reflected in someone's actions. And that realization forces you to decide what to do next. Do you keep clinging to the version of them that once existed? Or do you acknowledge the truth of what their actions are telling you? Love doesn't vanish overnight, but attention fades, priorities shift, and sometimes people change in ways we never expected. The question isn't whether they loved you before, it's whether they're still choosing to love you now. And if their actions don't align with the love they once expressed, then what you need to focus on is not why they're ignoring you, but what you are willing to accept in the name of love. From the moment we experience love, we start associating our value with how someone treats us. We learn to feel special when they notice us, when they choose us, when they make us feel like we matter. And while love is meant to elevate us, too often it becomes the very thing that defines us. When someone showers us with affection, we feel like we're on top of the world. Their attention makes us feel beautiful, wanted, important. But what happens when that attention suddenly disappears? What happens when the good morning texts stop, when the calls become less frequent, when the energy shifts and we feel like we're no longer a priority? The mistake we make is assuming that their change in behavior says something about us. That if they were once consistent and now they're distant, we must have done something wrong. That if they once looked at us with admiration, but now barely acknowledge us, we must have lost something special. That if they once made us feel like we were everything to them, but now act indifferent, we must not be enough anymore. But this is where we get it all wrong. The way someone treats you is a reflection of who they are, not of who you are. Their attention does not define your beauty, your intelligence, your kindness, or your worth. Their silence does not make you less lovable. Their distance does not make you less valuable. And yet, when someone starts ignoring us, our instinct is to question ourselves instead of questioning their ability to love us the right way. We replay moments in our head, searching for where things went wrong. We wonder if we said something, if we weren't interesting enough, if we should have done more, been more, tried harder. We convince ourselves that if we just understand what happened, we can fix it. And that's where we start losing ourselves. Not in their absence, but in our obsession with trying to reclaim their presence. But here's the truth. The moment you start seeking validation from someone else, you've already given away your power. Because love is not about proving yourself. It's not about earning someone's time, attention, or affection. It's not about becoming who you think they want you to be just to keep them interested. Love, real love, is about two people choosing each other every single day, not out of obligation, but because they genuinely want to. And if someone is suddenly ignoring you, if they've stopped showing up in the way they once did, then the question you should be asking is not, what did I do wrong? But why am I letting someone's inconsistency make me question my worth? When you base your value on someone's attention, you put yourself in a dangerous position. Because attention is fleeting. One day they're obsessed with you, the next they're distant. One moment they can't get enough of you, the next they're making excuses. And if your self-worth rises and falls based on their behavior, you'll spend your life on an emotional roller coaster, always waiting for someone else to decide when you get to feel good about yourself. But you were never meant to live like that. Your worth was never meant to be something that fluctuates based on someone else's level of interest. It was never meant to be dependent on how much effort someone puts into you on any given day. Your worth is something you were born with, something that exists within you, whether someone else sees it or not, whether someone acknowledges it or not, whether someone stays or walks away. And yet we chase. We overextend ourselves. We become addicted to the feeling of being chosen, so when someone stops choosing us, we panic. We think if we just reach out one more time, if we just remind them of what we have, if we just prove how much we care, maybe they'll come back. Maybe they'll see our worth again. But your worth is not something that needs to be seen by someone else for it to exist. It is not something that can be taken away just because someone stops appreciating it. It is not something that depends on whether or not they love you today the way they did yesterday. It's time to understand that someone ignoring you is not a reflection of your inadequacy. It's a reflection of their inability to love you the way you deserve. It's a reflection of their emotional availability, their priorities, their ability to communicate. It has nothing to do with whether or not you are enough. Because the truth is, you were always enough. You were enough when they first fell for you, and you are enough now. You were enough when they gave you their full attention, and you are still enough now that they're pulling away. Your enoughness does not diminish just because someone else failed to appreciate it. And yet we let their silence make us feel invisible. We let their absence make us feel unimportant. We let their emotional unavailability make us feel like we're the problem. But love doesn't work that way. Love is not about begging for consistency. It's not about proving you're worthy of attention. It's not about waiting around hoping that if you're patient enough, they'll remember how much they care. Love is about knowing your worth, even when someone else fails to see it. It's about choosing yourself even when someone else stops choosing you. It's about realizing that someone ignoring you is not an invitation to chase them. It's an opportunity to stand tall and remind yourself that you don't need external validation to be whole. Silence has a language of its own. It communicates what words often cannot. It carries weight, meaning, and undeniable truth. When someone who once loved you deeply suddenly stops talking, stops calling, stops showing up, it's not just an absence of sound, it's a message. And the hardest thing for most people to do is listen to that message for what it truly is. We are conditioned to believe that when someone pulls away, we should fill the void. That if they're not talking, we should reach out. That if they've gone silent, we should try to get an answer. But silence is an answer. And more often than not, it's the most honest one you'll ever get. Because words can lie. People can tell you they love you but not act like it. They can promise to be there for you and then disappear when you need them most. They can say they care but not show up when it really matters. Words are easy. Silence, on the other hand, is difficult to fake. When someone suddenly starts ignoring you, you have to ask yourself, what is their silence telling me? What truth have they stopped saying out loud but are now communicating through their absence? Because ignoring someone is not an accident. It's a choice to withdraw, to avoid, to create distance. And within that choice lies a deeper truth about where they stand. It's human nature to seek closure, to want an explanation, to crave understanding. But not everyone will give you the honesty you deserve. Some people don't want to explain themselves because they don't want to face their own emotions. Others don't have the maturity to communicate properly, and some people simply don't care enough to offer you the clarity you're looking for. But here's where most people go wrong. They refuse to accept silence as the answer it is. Instead, they fight it. They analyze every little detail, hoping to make sense of it. They send more texts, make more calls, try harder, believing that if they just ask the right question, they'll finally get a response. The response is already there. And silence, though painful, is powerful. It forces you to face reality. It forces you to stop making excuses for someone else's behavior. It forces you to look at what's right in front of you rather than what you wish were true. Because deep down, you already know what it means. You don't need another conversation. You don't need more explanations. You don't need to keep chasing someone who is showing you, through their silence, exactly how much or how little you mean to them. Silence is uncomfortable. That's why most people try to break it. They reach out again. They show up where they know they'll be seen. They post things online hoping for a reaction because they don't want to sit with the truth that the silence is revealing. But avoidance doesn't change reality. It only prolongs the pain. And here's another truth. If someone truly cares, They won't let silence be the final word. They won't leave you in the dark, wondering what went wrong. They won't make you question whether they still care. People who value you don't ignore you. They communicate, they clarify, they show up even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. So if someone has chosen to ignore you, if their silence has replaced their love, their attention, their effort, listen to what that silence is saying. It might not come with an explanation, but it carries a message far louder than words ever could. The question is not whether they'll eventually respond. The question is, why are you still waiting to hear from someone who has already spoken through their silence? When someone suddenly ignores you, your first instinct is to react. You feel the sting of their absence, the confusion of unanswered questions, and the frustration of being left in uncertainty. And in that moment, your emotions take control. You want to reach out, to demand answers, to do something to make sense of the situation. But here's where you have to stop and recognize one critical truth. You cannot control what they do, but you have complete control over how you respond. Most people don't realize this, but true power isn't found in getting someone else to act a certain way. It's found in how you handle what they do or don't do. It's easy to think, if only I can get them to talk to me, if only I can make them explain, if only I can change their mind, then I'll feel better. But that's a dangerous illusion, because the moment you start believing your peace, your confidence, and your happiness depend on someone else's actions, you've already given away your power. Think about it. If your self-worth crumbles the moment someone stops responding, were you ever standing in your own power to begin with? If you're waiting for them to acknowledge you before you can feel valuable, are you truly valuing yourself? If your emotions rise and fall based on whether or not they choose to give you attention, who is really in control of your life? This is where real transformation begins, not in getting them to change, but in choosing a response that empowers you instead of weakens you. Because when someone ignores you, you have two choices. Choice one, react emotionally. This is what most people do. You panic, you overthink, you start questioning everything. You send another message, then another. You try to stay busy, but your mind keeps circling back to them, wondering why, wondering if they'll ever come back, wondering what you could have done differently. And with every unanswered question, your confidence takes another hit. Maybe you start posting things online, hoping they'll see. Maybe you bring them up in conversations, hoping someone else has insight. Maybe you replay old memories, trying to hold on to a version of them that no longer exists. But no matter what you do, the same reality remains. They are choosing silence, and you are choosing to let their silence control you. And here's the hardest part. When you react emotionally, you actually reinforce their behavior. If they ignored you to gain space, your constant attempts to pull them back push them further away. If they ignored you because they've lost interest, your desperation confirms they have the upper hand. If they ignored you to manipulate you, your reaction shows them they have power over your emotions. And in every scenario, you lose. Which brings us to choice two, respond with power. This is what most people struggle to do because it requires you to stop chasing clarity and start creating it. It requires you to accept the situation for what it is, not for what you wish it was. And most of all, it requires you to take your focus off them and place it back on you. A powerful response doesn't mean you ignore your emotions. It means you take control of them. It means you acknowledge the pain, but you don't let it define you. It means you recognize that their silence is their choice, but what you do next is yours. A powerful response looks like not sending that extra text, not because you don't care, but because you refuse to beg for the attention you deserve. It looks like not waiting for them to return before you move forward with your life. It looks like choosing yourself in the absence of their choice to choose you. Because here's what happens when you take back your power. Suddenly, you're no longer at their mercy. You're no longer refreshing your messages, waiting for a response that may never come. You're no longer stuck in a cycle of self-doubt, wondering if you're not good enough. Instead, you're moving forward. You're reclaiming your confidence. You're showing yourself that someone else's inconsistency does not dictate your value. And here's the truth. When you stop reacting emotionally and start responding powerfully, you force a shift in the dynamic. If they were ignoring you for attention, they lose control the moment you stop giving them the reaction they expected. If they were ignoring you to create distance, they start to realize you're perfectly fine without them. And if they were ignoring you because they were unsure about their feelings, they now see that you are not someone who waits around for uncertainty. But most importantly, when you respond with power, you shift the focus from them to you. You begin to heal. You begin to grow. You begin to see that your happiness, your confidence, and your worth were never in their hands to begin with. And that is the most powerful realization of all.